Jake Morrison rolled out of his narrow bunk at 5:45 in the morning, just like he had done every day for the past 3 years. The metal walls of his tiny room on Nexus Station hummed with the constant vibration of the massive space facility. He pulled on his worn work jumpsuit and grabbed his datapad from the small table beside his bed. The corridors were mostly empty at this hour. A few night shift workers passed him in the hallways, their faces tired and gray under the harsh, artificial lighting. Jake nodded to them but kept walking. He had learned early on that making friends on the station was difficult. When you had the worst job anyone could imagine, the food preparation bay was located 3 levels down from the human quarters. Jake punched his code into the security panel and stepped inside. Rows of large metal containers lined the walls, each one filled with different types of nutrient solutions. The smell hit him immediately, a mix of chemicals and organic compounds that he had never gotten used to. He began his daily routine by checking the computer terminal for any changes to the feeding schedule. The screen displayed the same information. It showed every morning. 12 containers in the Dragon Bays needed fresh food. Each container required a different mixture based on the size and type of creature inside. Jake started with Bay 1. He filled a large wheeled cart with containers, a thick, gray liquid that looked like motor oil but smelled much worse. The cart was heavy and difficult to push through the narrow corridors that led to the restricted section of the station. The Dragon Bays were located in the most secure part of Nexus Station. Jake had to scan his identification card 3 times and pass through 2 different security checkpoints before he reached the first containment area. The Kalari guards barely looked at him as he pushed his cart past their posts. To them, he was just another human worker doing a job that no other species wanted. Bay 1 contained what Jake privately called Smokey. The creature was about the size of a small building, the body that seemed to be made of dark crystal. Floated in the center of a glowing energy field, completely still, except for the slow pulse of purple light that moved through its body like a heartbeat. Jake had never been told what these creatures actually were or where they came from. The official reports called them exotic matter generators, but that explanation had never made much sense to him. They looked alive, even if they never moved or made any sounds. He connected his feeding tube to the port beneath Smokey's containment field and began pumping the gray liquid into the system. The creature's body pulsed slightly brighter as the food entered its environment, but otherwise it showed no reaction to Jake's presence. "Morning, Smokey," Jake said quietly, even though he knew the creature probably could not hear him. "Hope you had a good night, if you sleep anyway." Talking to the creatures had become a habit over the years. It made the long, boring hours pass more quickly and helped him feel less alone in the vast emptiness of space. The other human workers thought he was strange for doing it, but Jake did not care what they thought. Bay 2 held Azure, a creature with a blue-green crystal body that was slightly smaller than Smokey, but somehow seemed more active. Jake could never be sure, but he thought Azure sometimes changed position inside its containment field. Today it was floating closer to the observation window than usual. "You look different today, Jake," told Azure as he prepared the feeding mixture. "Did something happen while I was gone?" The creature's body flickered with a pattern of light that Jake had never seen before. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was definitely different from the usual steady pulse that all the creatures displayed. Jake finished the feeding and moved on to Bay 3. The routine continued for the next 2 hours as he made his way through all 12 containment areas. Each creature required a slightly different food mixture and feeding schedule. Some were fed every day, others only twice a week. His favorite was the creature in Bay 7. Jake called her Ruby because of the warm red light that flowed through her crystal body. She was one of the larger creatures, nearly as big as Smokey, but something about her seemed gentler. Her light patterns were softer and more rhythmic than the others. "You know what I was thinking about last night?" Jake asked Ruby as he connected the feeding tube to her system. "That lake back home where my family used to go fishing every summer? The water was so clear you could see all the way to the bottom. And there were these huge fish that would swim right up to the dock." Ruby's body pulsed with a warm glow that seemed to respond to his voice. Jake had noticed this before, but had always assumed it was just coincidence. Today, though, The pattern seemed more deliberate, as if the creature was actually listening. To him, my grandfather taught me how to fish when I was 7 years old, Jake continued. He said the secret was patience. You had to sit very still and wait for the right moment. I guess that's what I'm doing here too, in a way, waiting for something to happen. The feeding process took about 15 minutes for each creature. Jake used the time to clean the observation windows and check the monitoring equipment. The Kalari supervisors expected detailed reports on each creature's condition and behavior. Commander 16 appeared at the entrance to Bay 7 just as Jake was finishing his work. The insectoid alien was nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 arms, and large compound eyes that seemed to look in several directions at once. Human Jake Morrison, the commander said through his translation device. Your efficiency ratings have decreased by 2% this week. Explain. Jake set down his cleaning supplies and faced the commander. I've been thorough with the health checks, sir. Want to make sure everything is working properly. Thoroughness is not required for this task, Zixneen replied. Feed the creatures and move on. Do not waste time with unnecessary procedures. Yes, sir, Jake said, but he did not mean it. Something important was happening with these creatures, and he was going to find out what it was? Jake could not stop thinking about the way Ruby had responded to his story about the lake. That night in his quarters, he lay on his bunk staring at the metal ceiling and replaying the moment over and over in his mind. The warm pulse of light had been different from anything he had seen before. It felt like the creature was trying to tell him something. The next morning, Jake decided to try something new. Instead of just going through his normal routine, he would pay more attention to how the creatures reacted to his voice. He started with Smokey in Bay 1, speaking more slowly and clearly than usual. Good morning, Smokey. I hope you're feeling well today. The temperature controls show everything is normal in your bay. Jake watched carefully as he spoke, looking for any change in the creature's light patterns or position. Smokey's purple glow remained steady and unchanged. Jake finished the feeding and moved on to Bay 2. Azure was floating in the same position as the day before, closer to the observation window than normal. Morning, Azure. You're still hanging out near the window, I see. Do you like watching me work? Jake prepared the blue-green creature's food mixture while he talked. I've been wondering if you can actually see me or if you just sense movement somehow. Azure's body flickered with the same unusual light pattern Jake had noticed. The previous day? This time it lasted longer. Almost 10 seconds of rapid pulses that moved from the creature's head to its tail in waves. Jake stopped what he was doing and stared at the creature. Did you just answer me? The light pattern repeated. Exactly the same as before. Jake felt his heart rate increase. This was definitely not normal behavior for the creatures. He quickly finished Azure's feeding and hurried to the next bay. By the time he reached Ruby in Bay 7, Jake was excited and nervous. He had been talking to these creatures for 3 years without any real response. Now 2 of them were showing signs that they might actually understand him. Ruby, I need to tell you about something that happened yesterday, Jake said as he began preparing her food. After I told you about the lake, you did something different with your lights. And this morning, Azure responded to my questions. I think you can understand me, can't you? Ruby's entire body began to glow brighter. The red light that usually moved through her crystal form in slow, steady pulses suddenly became faster and more complex. Patterns of light swirled through her body like liquid fire, creating shapes and designs that Jake had never seen before. That's amazing, Jake whispered. You really can understand me. The light show continued for nearly a minute before fading, back to Ruby's normal gentle glow. Jake stood there staring at the creature, his mind racing with questions. If these beings could understand human speech, what else could they do? How intelligent were they? Over the next few days, Jake began experimenting with different ways of communicating with the creatures. He discovered that they seemed to respond most strongly to stories and personal experiences rather than simple questions or commands. When he told them about his childhood, his family, or his dreams, their light patterns became more active and complex. The creature in Bay 4, which Jake called Emerald because of its green crystal body, showed the strongest responses to his stories. When Jake described the music he used to listen to back on Earth, Emerald's body would vibrate in rhythms that seemed to match the songs he was talking about. "You like music, don't you?" Jake asked Emerald during one of their sessions. "I wish I could play some for you, but the entertainment systems aren't connected to the Dragon Bays." Emerald's vibrations became stronger, and Jake could feel them through the floor of the bay. The creature was definitely trying to communicate something, but Jake could not figure out what it was trying to say. The breakthrough came during his third week of intentional communication attempts. Jake had been telling Ruby about his grandfather's fishing stories when something impossible happened. He heard a voice in his head that was not his own. "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man," the voice said. It was calm and gentle with a quality that reminded Jake of wind chimes or distant thunder. Jake dropped the feeding tube and stumbled backward. "What? Who said that?" "Do not be afraid," the voice continued. "I am the one you call Ruby. I have been listening to your stories and learning your language. You are the first being in many years to speak to us with kindness." Jake looked around the bay to make sure he was alone. The security cameras were in their normal positions, and no one else was visible. He was either going crazy, or he was actually talking to a creature that everyone believed was just a mindless animal. "This is impossible," Jake said out loud. "You're supposed to be just exotic matter generators. The reports say you don't have any intelligence." "The reports are wrong," Ruby replied, her voice echoing inside Jake's head. "We are much more than what your people believe. We have been waiting for someone who could see us as more than just resources." Jake sat down on the metal floor of the bay, his legs suddenly weak. "How long have you been able to do this? Talk to people, I mean." "We have always been able to communicate," Ruby explained, "but most beings do not listen the way you do. See our physical forms and assume we are simple creatures. You spoke to us as if we were friends, even when you thought we could not understand. Are the others like you? Can they all talk? Some of us are stronger communicators than others. Emerald has been trying to reach you through vibrations. Azur speaks through light patterns. We all have different ways of expressing ourselves." These creatures were not just intelligent. They were individuals with their own personalities and abilities. They had been trapped in these containment fields for who knows how long, treated like objects while being fully aware of their situation. "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. "I'm nobody important. I just feed you and clean your bays." "Are more important than you know," Ruby said. "We're the first person to treat us with respect and friendship. That makes you very special indeed. We have been hoping to find someone like you for a very long time."
Ow.
Jake looked up at Ruby's massive crystal form floating in the energy field above him. The creature's red light pulsed gently, and somehow Jake knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than he could imagine. Jake spent the rest of that day in a daze. Every time he tried to focus on his regular duties, his mind kept returning to his conversation with Ruby. He had actually spoken with one of the creatures. Not only could they understand human language, but they could communicate directly into his thoughts. That evening, Jake sat in the small recreation area where the human workers gathered after their shifts. He wanted to tell someone about his discovery, but he knew no one would believe him. Dr. Lisa Park, the chief human scientist on the station, was sitting at a nearby table reading reports on her datapad. "Dr. Park," Jake said, approaching her. "Table, can I ask you something about the creatures in the Dragon Bays?" Lisa looked up from her work. She was a serious woman in her 40s who had been studying the creatures for 2 years. "What do you want to know, Jake? Have you ever noticed anything unusual about their behavior? Like they might be more intelligent than the reports suggest?" Lisa set down her datapad and looked at Jake with interest. "What kind of behavior are you talking about?" Jake hesitated, could not tell her about the telepathic communication. Without sounding crazy, well, they seem to respond to my voice when I talk to them. Their light patterns change, and sometimes they move position in their containment fields. That's interesting, Lisa said. I've been studying their bioelectric patterns for months, and there are definitely signs of complex neural activity. Much more complex than what you'd expect from simple exotic matter generators. Jake felt a surge of hope. So you'd think they might be intelligent? It's possible, Lisa admitted. But the Kaleri have classified them as non-sentient resources. Even if we could prove they're intelligent, it would be difficult to change their status without concrete evidence. Jake nodded and thanked Dr. Park for her time. He returned to his quarters feeling frustrated. He had made the most important discovery in human history, but he had no way to prove it to anyone else. The next morning, Jake went straight to Bay 7 to continue his conversation with Ruby. The massive creature was floating in her usual position, her red crystal body pulsing gently in the energy field. Ruby, I need to understand more about what you are, Jake said, as he began preparing her morning meal. Dr. Park thinks you might be intelligent, but she needs proof. Can you help me show her? We are called the Lumina, Ruby's voice echoed. In Jake's mind, we are an ancient people who have existed for millions of your years. What you see as our bodies are not flesh and blood like yours, but crystalline matrices that contain our consciousness. Jake stopped working and stared up at the creature. You're not just intelligent, you're an entire species, as Ruby confirmed. We are the last of our kind. Our physical forms died out long ago, but we learned to preserve our minds and memories within these crystal structures. We have been searching the galaxy for other intelligent species who might understand us. How did you end up here on the station? We allowed ourselves to be captured by the Kaleri, Ruby explained. We hoped that by studying us, they might discover our true nature, but they see only what they want to see. To them, we are valuable because our bodies can generate exotic matter. They do not care about our minds or our history. Jake felt angry on behalf of the Lumina. That's terrible. You're prisoners here. We are prisoners, but we chose this fate, Ruby said. Our species is dying, Jake. We cannot reproduce as biological beings do. Our knowledge and memories can only be preserved by sharing them with other intelligent minds. We have been waiting for a species that could form the mental connections necessary to receive our gifts. Other species can't do what I'm doing? Talking to you like this? No, Ruby replied. We have encountered many intelligent species over the millennia. The Kaleri, the Xanthari, the Vorthan, and dozens of others. They all have advanced technology. In complex societies, but their minds are rigid and specialized. They cannot adapt to new forms of communication. Jake walked closer to the observation window, looking up at Ruby's massive form. What makes humans different? Human brains are chaotic and unpredictable, Ruby explained. Most species would see this as a weakness, but it is actually your greatest strength. Your minds can form new neural pathways quickly and adapt to unexpected situations. When you speak to us with genuine emotion and openness, you create mental bridges that allow us to reach across the gap between our forms of consciousness. Are you saying humans are the only species that can communicate with you? You are the first we have found, Ruby confirmed. We have been studying your people since humans arrived on the station. Most of your kind ignore us or fear us, but you treated us with kindness and respect. You saw us as individuals rather than objects. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What do you want from me? What can I do to help? We want to share our knowledge with humanity, Ruby said. We've learned secrets of the universe that could advance your species by thousands of years, technologies that could eliminate disease and poverty, methods of space travel that could take you to distant galaxies, wisdom about the nature of consciousness itself. But why would you give us all that? What do you get in return? Survival, Ruby replied simply. We can teach some humans to communicate with us fully, to merge their consciousness with ours. Then our species will not die out completely. We will become something new, a combination of human adaptability and Lumina wisdom. Jake felt his pulse quicken. You're talking about some kind of joining? Humans and Lumina together? Yes, Ruby confirmed. But it must be voluntary. We will not force this gift on anyone. Those who choose to join with us will become more than human, but they will still retain their human memories and emotions. They will become bridges between our two species. How many humans would you need? 12 would be enough to begin with, Ruby said. 12 humans willing to expand their consciousness and become the first of a new kind of being, Jake thought. About the implications of what Ruby was proposing. Sounded like science fiction, but he knew it was real. The Lumina were offering humanity a chance to evolve beyond their current limitations. I'll do it, Jake said without hesitation. I'll be one of the 12. We hoped you would say that, Ruby replied, her red light pulsing brighter. But you will need to convince others to join you. And you will need to find a way to make this happen despite the Kalari's control over us. Jake nodded, his mind already working on the problem. I'll find a way. But first I need to convince Dr. Park and the other humans that you're really intelligent. Can you help me with that? We'll do whatever's necessary, Ruby promised. The future of both our species depends on it. Jake knew he had to act fast. Ruby had warned him that the Kalari were planning to move the Lumina to a more secure facility within days. Once that happened, any chance of helping his new friends would be lost forever. That evening, Jake approached Dr. Lisa Park in her laboratory. She was running tests on samples of the exotic matter that the creatures produced. Her face focused on the computer screen in front of her. Dr. Park, I need to show you something important, Jake said. What's about? The creatures in the dragon bays. Lisa looked up from her work. Jake, I'm very busy right now. Can this wait until tomorrow? No, it can't, Jake said firmly. What I'm about to tell you will change everything we know about those creatures. They're not just intelligent. They're an ancient species called the Lumina, and they've been trying to communicate with us. Lisa stared at Jake for a long moment. That's a very serious claim. Do you have any proof? Come with me to Base 7 right now, and I'll show you. Against her better judgment, Lisa followed Jake through the station corridors to the restricted section. They passed the Kalari guards without incident, since both Jake and Lisa had proper clearance to enter the Dragon Bays. In Bay 7, Ruby was waiting for them. Her crystal body pulsed with gentle red light as Jake and Lisa entered the observation area. Ruby, this is Dr. Lisa Park, Jake said aloud. She's a scientist who has been studying your people. Can you show her that you're intelligent? Ruby's body suddenly blazed with brilliant light. Patterns of red and gold swirled through her crystal form in complex mathematical sequences. The display was so beautiful and obviously intentional that Lisa gasped in amazement. That's impossible, Lisa whispered. The bioelectric readings we've been getting don't show this level of complexity. Your instruments cannot measure what we truly are. Ruby's voice echoed in both Jake and Lisa's. Mine simultaneously. We exist as pure consciousness within these crystal matrices. Your technology can detect our physical processes, but not our thoughts and memories. Lisa stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock. Did that creature just speak to me telepathically? Name is Ruby, Jake said. Gosh, she's been talking to me for days. The Lumina have been waiting for humans who could communicate with them. They want to share their knowledge with us. Over the next hour, Ruby explained the Lumina's history and their desperate situation to Dr. Park. Lisa asked dozens of scientific questions, and Ruby answered them all with detailed explanations that demonstrated knowledge far beyond what any human possessed. This is incredible, Lisa finally said. If what you're telling me is true, these beings have scientific knowledge that could advance humanity by centuries. It is true, Ruby confirmed, but we need your help. The Kalari plan to move us to a high-security facility tomorrow. Yes. Are there? We will have no chance to complete our mission. What mission? Lisa asked. To find 12 humans willing to join with us, Ruby explained. To merge human consciousness with Lumina wisdom and create a new form of life that combines the best of both species. Lisa looked at Jake with concern. That sounds incredibly dangerous. We don't know what the long-term effects of such a procedure would be. The volunteers would keep their human memories and personalities, Ruby assured her. But they would also gain access to millions of years of Lumina knowledge and the ability to exist as both physical and energy beings. They would become bridges between our two worlds. Jake stepped forward. I've already volunteered to be one of the 12, but we need more people who are willing to take this risk. Lisa was quiet for several minutes, clearly struggling with the decision. Finally, she spoke. If this is real, then it's the most important discovery in human history. But I can't ask other people to volunteer for something this dangerous without more information. What information do you need? Ruby asked. Proof that the procedure is safe, Lisa replied. And proof that you really have the knowledge you claim to possess. Ruby's light patterns shifted to a deep blue color. I will show you something that will prove both points. Jake, place your hand on the observation window. Jake did as Ruby asked. As soon as his palm touched the transparent barrier, his mind was flooded with images and information. He saw the history of the Lumina civilization, witnessed the development of technologies that seemed like magic, and understood scientific principles that human scientists had not even begun to discover. The experience lasted only a few seconds. But when it ended, Jake felt different. He could sense things about the station's power systems and life support that he had never noticed before. His understanding of physics and mathematics had expanded dramatically. What did you do to him? Lisa asked, clearly worried. I gave him a small sample of our knowledge, Ruby explained. It's nothing permanent, just enough to demonstrate what we can offer. Jake, tell Dr. Park what you learned. Jake began describing advanced theories of space-time manipulation and energy conversion that made Lisa's eyes grow wider with each word. The knowledge was far beyond anything in human textbooks, but it all made perfect sense to Jake now. This is real, Lisa whispered. The knowledge level you're displaying is impossible for a human to have learned through normal means. Will you help us? Ruby asked. We need to act tonight before the Kalari move us to the secure facility. Lisa looked back and forth between Jake and Ruby, clearly torn between scientific caution and the opportunity of a lifetime. How many volunteers do you need besides Jake? 11 more, Ruby replied. People who are willing to become something new for the sake of both our species. I'll do it, Lisa said suddenly. And I know others who might be willing as well. Captain Henry Cole has been looking for ways to improve humanity's standing in the Galactic Commerce Union. Engineer Peter Kim and communications specialist Rachel Stone are both curious about alien technology. We will need to move quickly, Ruby warned. Commander Zixanine has already ordered extra security for tomorrow's transfer. Once the sun cycle begins, our opportunity will be lost. Jake felt his heart racing with excitement and fear. Few hours, he and 11 other humans would attempt something that had never been done before. They would either become the first members of a new hybrid species, or they would fail and lose their chance to help the Lumina forever. How do we do this? Jake asked. What's the plan? Ruby's light patterns shifted to a warm golden color. During the next shift change, when security is lightest, you and the other volunteers must come to our containment bays. We will lower our energy barriers and begin the consciousness merger process. What about the Kalari? Lisa asked. They'll try to stop us. We have powers that we have not used for many centuries, Ruby said. When the time comes, we will protect those who have chosen to help us. Jake looked at Dr. Park and saw his own determination reflected in her eyes. No. They were about to embark on the most dangerous and important mission in human history. Let's go find our volunteers, Jake said. We have a new species to create. Jake and Dr. Park spent the next 3 hours quietly moving through the human quarters, carefully selecting people they could trust with the most important secret in the galaxy. Captain Henry Cole was their first stop. The veteran officer listened to their explanation with growing amazement and agreed to participate without hesitation. If this can give humanity a real voice in the galactic community, then I'm in, Cole said firmly. We've been treated like servants for too long. Engineer Peter Kim was harder to convince. He asked dozens of technical questions about the consciousness merger process before finally agreeing to join them. Communications specialist Rachel Stone volunteered immediately after hearing about the Lumina's advanced knowledge of interstellar communication systems. By midnight, they had gathered 12 volunteers total. Besides Jake, Dr. Park, Captain Cole, Peter Kim, and Rachel Stone. They had recruited maintenance worker Danny Ross, medical technician Susan White, security officer Frank Lopez, computer specialist Amy Chen, botanist Greg Miller, geologist Karen Bell, and food service coordinator Matt Brown. They met in the station's main cargo bay, which was empty during the night shift. Captain Cole had used his authority to disable the security cameras in that section, giving them a few hours of privacy. To plan their approach, everyone needs to understand what we're doing, Dr. Park addressed the group. This consciousness merger process has never been attempted before. We could become something amazing, or we could die in the process. Anyone who wants to back out can leave now. No one moved. Jake felt proud of his fellow humans and their willingness to take risks for the greater good. The Lumina will begin the transfer process at 0200 hours, Captain Cole explained. That's when the security shift changes, and we'll have the best. A chance of reaching the Dragon Bays without being detected. At exactly 2 in the morning, the 12 volunteers made their way through the quiet corridors of Nexus Station. They split into small groups to avoid attracting attention. Using maintenance tunnels and cargo lifts that Peter Kim knew from his engineering work, Jake led the first group, which included Dr. Park and Captain Cole. They reached the restricted section without encountering any guards, but as they approached the entrance to the Dragon Bays, Commander Zixneen appeared with 4 Kolari soldiers. "Stop immediately," the commander ordered through his translation device. "You are not authorized to enter this area during night shift hours. We have important research to conduct," Dr. Park said, trying to sound calm. "There have been some unusual readings from the exotic matter generators." "No research has been scheduled for tonight," Zixneen replied suspiciously. "Return to your quarters immediately or face disciplinary action," before anyone could respond. The lights in the corridor began to flicker. A low humming sound filled the air, growing louder and more intense with each passing second. The metal walls of the station began to vibrate. "What is happening?" Zixneen demanded, looking around in confusion. Jake realized that the Lumina were using their powers to help the volunteers reach the containment bays. Energy fields that had trapped the ancient beings for years were now being turned into weapons to protect their human friends. Brilliant beams of light shot out from the Dragon Bays, creating a barrier between the humans and the Kolari soldiers. The barrier was warm and gentle to human touch, but seemed to repel the insectoid aliens completely. "Impossible," Zixneen hissed. "The containment systems are malfunctioning. Alert all security teams immediately." But his soldiers could not move past the energy barrier. Jake and his group quickly passed through the protective field and hurried toward Bay 7, where Ruby was waiting. The other volunteer groups arrived. Within minutes, all protected by similar energy barriers that the Lumina had created throughout the restricted section. The ancient beings were finally using their true power after centuries of pretending to be helpless in Bay 7. Ruby's containment field was gone. The massive crystalline being floated freely in the center of the bay, her red light pulsing with excitement and anticipation. "Are you ready?" Ruby asked all 12 volunteers. "Teleteka." "Why?" Jake stepped forward first. "We're ready. To join hands in a circle around me," Ruby instructed. "The consciousness merger will be easier if you maintain physical contact with each other during the process." 12 humans formed a circle beneath Ruby's floating form. Jake held Dr. Park's hand on one side and Captain Cole's on the other. He could feel the nervous energy of his companions, but also their determination to see this through. "Do not be afraid," Ruby said gently. "You will remain yourselves, but you will also become more than you ever imagined possible." Ruby's body began to glow brighter than Jake had ever seen before. Streams of light flowed down from her crystal form, touching each of the 12 volunteers. Jake felt the energy enter his mind, but instead of being painful or frightening, it was like coming home after a long journey. Knowledge flowed into Jake's consciousness. He understood the secrets of faster-than-light travel, the mysteries of consciousness itself, and the history of 100 different civilizations. But he also retained his memories of Earth, his love for his family, and his friendship with Ruby. The transformation took only minutes, but when it was complete, Jake knew he had become something new. He could exist as both physical matter and pure energy. He could communicate telepathically across vast distances and understand scientific principles that human universities had not even begun to discover around him. The other 11 volunteers were experiencing the same transformation. They remained recognizably human, but they had also become something more. They were the first human Lumina hybrids, bridges between two very different forms of life. "Welcome to your new existence," Ruby said, her voice now speaking directly to their expanded consciousness. "You are no longer just human, or just Lumina. You're the future of both our species." Outside the bay, Jake could hear Commander Zix-9 shouting orders and calling for backup. But it no longer mattered. The transformation was complete, and the Galactic Commerce Union would have to recognize what had happened. Within hours, news of the human-Lumina merger spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity went from being a junior member species to being partners with one of the most ancient and wise civilizations in the universe. The other alien species that had looked down on humans suddenly found themselves asking for help and guidance. Jake continued his job of feeding the remaining Lumina. But now he understood that he was really nurturing friendships that would last forever. He had started as a simple maintenance worker whose only job was to feed the dragons. He had ended up becoming the bridge between two worlds and helping to create a new form of life that would explore the stars for millions of years to come. Every morning when Jake made his rounds through the Dragon Bays, now as both human and Lumina, he remembered his grandfather's advice about the importance of taking care of others. He had begun by caring for creatures he thought were animals. He discovered they were friends who needed someone to listen to their stories. In the end, that simple act of kindness had changed the future of two entire species and opened up possibilities that neither humans nor Lumina could have achieved alone.